my actually not so many years of playing D&D, I am starting to see a trend. And that is whenever the holidays roll around and people start feeling refreshed and relaxed, everyone in the D&D group chat starts casually mentioning that they'd like to maybe try being a game master. Of course, the return to work or school or reality seems to hit, and everyone sort of realizes, understandably, that being a GM is a major time commitment. And I'm left having excitedly created a bunch of new characters that sit in my back pocket to be saved for later or recycled into an NPC in my own campaign. And that's why we're here, folks, because I have 5, well, actually many more than that, but 5 vague D&D character concepts that I have brought for you to feast on. 1 or 2 of which I hope will get to see the light of a campaign someday, so let's get into it. Once again, I am working in an incredibly haphazard manner where I work on all 5 characters sort of at the same time, so I apologize. It's not necessarily going to be the character on the screen that I'm talking about, but I will be talking about them going from the rightmost character to the leftmost character, so hopefully that keeps things relatively organized and understandable. You may notice a theme of sorts when it comes to all, or at least most of these characters. I have and always have had an appreciation for cryptids and fantasy folklore creatures, so naturally, of course, whenever I was given the hint of a possibility of being in a new campaign or one-shot, I immediately started out my journeys by making a werewolf lady. I mean, let's be realistic here. It checks off so many boxes for me and what I've been wanting to do. In my last video, I hinted about blood hunters continuing to be a part of my future, and this character will give me a different from tonic but still overall blood hunter class experience. Also, D&D Beyond recently removed the ability to individually buy classes and specific content, which I personally am really bummed out about, but some Critical Role content is still available for free, including the blood hunter class and subclasses, so granted that you're going with one of the base race options available, you can still build a blood hunter without making any purchases at all on D&D Beyond. Another reason I really wanted to build a werewolf is that they're very, I don't know if tactile is the right word to describe it, but I live for character transformation descriptions. As a player, I love describing how different magic abilities manifest. I love what Travis Willingham does in campaign 3 with his character, and whenever I DM, my favorite thing is hearing players describe their abilities or whatever else in the campaign. Recently, I had my players betting on a lizard race. Instead of having them tell their dice rolls to the table, I told them to personally keep track of their total scores over the course of the race, but for each roll, describing their chosen lizard's behavior as they roll low or high. And at least for me, it was very fun to have someone else doing a bunch of describing at the table, and it kept the immersion a lot tighter than throwing out a bunch of numbers. And the last thing this character checks off is that it is the perfect opportunity to dust off the old Eastern European accent. I love an excuse to do a fun voice for a campaign, and Baba Rusalka is the perfect fit for it. My backstory idea for her is that she's the sort of village grandma, an old crone, if you will, that is the eyes and ears of her local town. She's a massive gossip. She's very stubborn, but everyone loves having her in town because they believe her to be a bit of a good luck charm. All the surrounding villages seem to be plagued with monsters and have had werewolf sightings, but the one Baba Rusalka lives in remains safe. What the village doesn't know is that Baba Rusalka is the werewolf that runs amok in the forest, and with her former military experience and new lycanthropic powers, she protects her hometown fiercely. Also, just in case anyone is curious, because I like to attach fun and interesting names to my characters, Rusalka does not translate into werewolf, but the Rusalki are an Eastern European cryptid. They're kind of like a nymph of sorts. It's one of your beautiful feminine presenting entities that drown men in water. Traditionally, Rusalki don't necessarily have to have an association with water. In specifically Polish folklore, a Rusalka will lure someone into the depths of the forest with her beauty before turning into a horrible creature and forcing their victim to dance in a frenzy until they pass away from exhaustion. Which, you know, is not exactly in line with the character that I've designed, but I really like the sound of Baba Rusalka. I just thought it sounded cool, and, you know, the whole concept of something that isn't what it seems until you get up close. A very fun and exciting stuff. I love Baba Rusalka. She's at the front of the line for the next campaign that is going to allow her to be in there. I am so excited to pretend to be a nosy old babsha. It's not even funny. I have been mulling over this character concept for quite a while now, so she is the most fleshed out of the 5 characters that I've created, but that doesn't make the rest of these any less important, so let's take a look at our next character, Magdalena. Magdalena is a very small, unassuming woman with pale skin and silvery white hair. She always wears these white, holy robes and a necklace with a pendant in the shape of an anatomical heart. And nobody throw tomatoes at me, but I wanted to make another cleric. I'm not committed to any subclass or domain that she'll be a part of, but I am leaning a little bit towards Grave Domain. She could qualify as a paladin, but she just looks more like a mage to me. But either way, Magdalena is an incredibly righteous woman. She is deeply devoted in her faith, and she will do anything, and I mean anything, to set the world right in the eyes of her deity. She casts holy judgment on the wrongdoers of the world and will not hesitate to lay waste to sinners. But as always, and in keeping with the themes, there is a catch, and also the primary reason why I hesitated to commit to the Grave Domain subclass. Magdalena was an idea born out of my brother-in-law showing me the Ebon Tide D&D book, and also stumbling across the Darakul race. I actually had no idea that Ebon Tide existed at all. If I was looking for monstrous D&D characters to play, I often looked towards the Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft, as you would. But Ebon Tide has a pretty big collection of playable races geared towards a darker, more Shadow Fae vibe. So, I mean, if you are planning on building that edgelord character that everybody has to have at least one of, I would highly recommend bringing Ebon Tide to the attention of your GM. Darakul are basically ghouls. They are undead, though they are quite good at deceiving others into thinking they are not. Darakul have resistance to necrotic and poison damage. They don't need to breathe, they sleep for only 6 hours, and they have an incredibly powerful bite. Depending on what you were before you became a Darakul, you retain some of your previous abilities as well. For example, as a drow, your bite attack becomes poisonous, dealing an additional 1d6 damage. As a dwarf, your hit point maximum increases by 1 every time you gain a level. And as a halfling, you still get halfling luck, but instead of you re-rolling 1s, your opponent re-rolls their nat 20 attacks. And if the new roll misses you, they take just a little bit of necrotic damage. But these fun and funky traits don't come without their problems, because as a Darakul, you are required to consume at least 1 pound of flesh every 24 hours, or else you start taking points of exhaustion and also can't regain any hit points. And therein lies the problem of why I don't think she can be a grave cleric, because the whole thing about being a grave cleric is that you respect the dead and you make sure that the dead stay dead. And you know, I could be wrong, but becoming undead and eating flesh feels like the opposite of that. But also, I could see Magdalena mentally warping her circumstances to believe that it's a blessing, that she is some sort of holy chosen one and carries out her new flesh-driven skewed belief set or something. My reservations with playing this character is that I worry that she is too evil to mesh well with other players, and that her zeal is going to grate on the party, which will in turn grate on me. But I do like the idea of secretly stealing away to consume flesh. I don't know, something about secretly being a horrible little guy is incredibly enjoyable to me. Don't read into it at all. Okay, so my third character idea can be summed up in a single word: y'alternative. She is a dampier cowboy with a wide-brimmed hat to keep her shaded from the sun. Look, I told you there were themes. I told you that there were themes. The themes are very present. I don't have a name for her. I ended up calling her V, but secretly V-Ha. Honestly, a Dampier is just a less complicated, more user-friendly version of a Darakul. They still have hunger, but with fewer in-game consequences. They have the crazy bite power, and also they don't need to breathe. As for a class, I thought Beastmaster Ranger. Oh, but Lady Splitchin, what about a gunslinger? That's the most cowboy thing I can think of. Beastmaster isn't that great of a subclass, blah 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 blah. Okay, first off, I'm not here to min-max anything, because consider this: cowboy vampire on a spectral horse. Don't come to me about mounted combatant feats and whether or not a primal companion can be ridden. Look, I am going to make it work. I don't care how inefficient it is. I'm not here to win the game. I'm here to make a cool character, and I will die trying to achieve one very specific goal. if you get mad at my D&D builds, we're not the same. You just don't see my vision. No, I do acknowledge fully that it is not the most ideal build out there, far from it in fact, but everything I do here, I do it for the aesthetic, I do it for the vibes, and for all the ranting and raving that I do on this channel about being a general vampire enjoyer, I've never played a vampiric character before. Nope, that's a lie, I DM'd part of Curse of Strahd, but as a player character, I've never chosen the vampire race, and you know what, it's inevitable, it's gotta happen one of these days. Character number 4 is the character I have the least direction for. The original concept was to diversify myself out of playing exclusively spellcasters or half-casters and make a Harengon rogue, but we ran into something along the way, which is when I create characters that are part or fully animal, I want to go very much out of my way to make them not cute, or at least not just cute, because Calliope, for example, she's part cow, she's very cute, but she was specifically inspired by my Polish Slavic heritage. Her last name, Truskówka, is a play on words between the Polish words for strawberry and cow, so of course I had to circle the aesthetic for my character around that, and it ended up being very cute. Also, on the other hand, Tonic, part rat. I could have made a cute little mousy character, but I wanted to make a sewer rat who drinks horrible little potions. So when it came to this character, I wanted a Harengon that wasn't just a cute little bunny girl, which, to be clear, I have nothing against characters that are cute, but I wanted to really put an emphasis on the hair in Harengon. Hares are very interesting creatures, very different from rabbits. There's a knowledge and ferocity about them that make them look a little bit haunted, and I wanted to evoke that haunted wisdom in an eccentric character. Of course, an eccentric forest creature leaned us very much in the direction of wizard, which, you know, obviously lands us squarely back into the realm of being a spellcaster, but it is what it is. But because she only came into existence as I was drawing her, I only have very vague backstory snippet ideas, probably some Watership Down inspired backstory. After all, her ears have these notches in them, and I think that warrants some kind of interesting explanation. I can also see her having become sort of a hermit of a wizard, hunting down esoteric and obscure tomes and relics and teaching herself wizardry. I think it would be really, really cool to have her be a divination wizard, because I don't know, something about the connection of hair eyes and being able to see into the future and read minds, and it seems fitting. I don't know. And much like V, I couldn't think of a name for her initially. The names that I originally had for a more martial character didn't seem to fit her anymore, but my husband saw me working on her design and said she should be called Lucky, as in Lucky Rabbit's Foot, and I think that's the perfect combination of a little on the nose and a little bit meaningful that I tend to like for the names of my characters. So Lucky it is. So on to our last character of the video. This was a lot of ideas all combined into one character that I wasn't super sure of when I finished the sketching phase, but it really all came together super well once I finished the rendering, which is very unusual. I often prefer my characters before they are rendered. I love the sketches. Honestly, I always regret that I forget to save a sketch-only version of my drawings. I actively draw on top of my sketches on the same layer. But for once, I liked how this character looked better after the render because of the textures and designs in the fabric of her clothing. The primary design inspiration for this character was me realizing that I make a lot of characters centered around Slavic themes as a result of having spent more time in Poland and knowing more about my family's history on the Polish side. So I thought it was high time I make a character inspired by the Malaysian side of my family. Actually, this stemmed from the Korean song Changwon, which is a song about a man who comes back as a vengeful ghost to hunt down the tiger that ended his life. Are you picking up on the themes? Are the themes exceedingly obvious? Since I'm not Korean and I already was on a cryptid research kick, I wanted to build a vengeful character around my own culture's folklore. So I looked up some Malaysian cryptid creatures and came across Langsear and Pontianak, which have less to do with hunting down tigers and more to do with stillborn children or horrible husbands. But the themes are still there. So I wanted Langsear or Pontianak. I'm not sure which name I'll do or if I'll modify the name name to suit the character because I'm not quite sold on it, but I wanted her to be a reborn Yuan Ti. And I know there's some pretty hot debates about ancestral lineages and if reborn get to keep some of their abilities from their previous lives. It's something that if I do get to play this character, I will be heavily discussing it with the DM. And honestly, if she's just a Yuan Ti physically flavored reborn without any of the Yuan Ti specific abilities, or if she's either just Yuan Ti or just reborn, I'm totally okay with all of the options. I have zero idea of what class or subclass she might be. I think she'd make a really cool rogue or fighter. Pontianak and Langsiar in the folklore both have abilities centered around flying and chasing, so maybe I'd prioritize getting her to be very fast with a lot of mobility. The fighter class is a really good way to get a lot of attacks in a short amount of time, but consider a phantom archetype rogue. It would be doubling down, tripling down on the themes. I just think it would be very fitting. But beyond speculation of the possibilities, I genuinely love this character design. Malaysia has a lot of different fashion influences in it. You know, comes with the territory of being a small country that has been invaded and colonized many times, but I took influences from all across the country and mixed and matched them into this outfit. But the reason rendering made such a big difference is because Malaysia has a lot of pattern fabric or like brocade woven fabric, and it was only after the render that I got to put in all the scale shapes and cool trims and snake motifs in the clothing, and I really think it brought her whole design together. And also one last note before we end the collection, no, she does not have horns. Yes, she does meticulously put her hair up in these little cones every morning just for the aesthetic. Okay, that brings us to the end of my character ideas going into 2025. I really hope they find a home somewhere, whether that's in a campaign I run, a campaign I play, or in your campaign. Feel absolutely free to take a couple ideas here and there because that's art, baby, and these lovely creatures need to live elsewhere besides just in my heart. Let them breathe. But if we can conclude one thing from this experience, it's that I need to stop being so inclined to make spellcasters. Like, imagine intentionally trying to create a martial class character design and then accidentally making a wizard, which is notoriously the least martial class of all time. But on that note, thank you so much for watching. Let me know which of these 5 you'd most be interested in seeing make a reappearance on this channel, because I am dying to draw Baba Rusalka in her werewolf form and also her generic unassuming old lady cosplay. I really hope I get a chance to play all of these lovely girlies in a campaign, but at the end of the day, who knows? Not me.